August 23rd, 1942, 16:18 hours. Stalingrad, on the west bank of the Volga River. The sky fractures first. A distant rumble becomes a tearing roar as Heinkel, He-111s, and Junkers Ju-88s punch through the clouds in tight formation. Their shadows slide across apartment blocks, factories, schools, ordinary city shapes, frozen for a fraction of a second before gravity takes over. Bomb bay doors open. Time hesitates. Then the city explodes. Concrete erupts upward like water. Brick walls fold inward. Tram lines twist. A fuel depot ignites, sending a black column into the air that blots out the sun. The Volga flashes silver beneath falling ash as civilians run, stumble, vanish into smoke. Sirens scream and are cut off mid-note. Somewhere, a child is crying. Somewhere else, a man is buried alive and doesn't know it yet. From the Luftwaffe cockpits, it looks decisive, textbook, clean, the kind of annihilation German planners have trusted since Poland, since France. Flatten the city, break resistance, move on. But on the ground, the rules are already dissolving. A Soviet anti-aircraft gun fires blindly through smoke. A Red Army lieutenant drags two men into a cellar as the ceiling caves, and behind them, the floor shakes. The walls bleed dust. When the bombing lifts for a moment, the silence is worse. Thick, ringing, unnatural. Then the fires take over, feeding on shattered buildings, turning streets into furnaces. This is what victory is supposed to look like. For weeks, Berlin has been certain. Intelligence briefings dismiss Soviet industry as exhausted. Manpower is spent. Stalingrad was never meant to be a battle, only a waypoint, a name to be crossed off on the way to the Caucasus oil fields. General Friedrich Paulus's Sixth Army has advanced hundreds of kilometers. Soviet formations have collapsed before. This city, they believe, will do the same. But the city doesn't collapse. It disintegrates. And in that disintegration, something changes. By nightfall, Stalingrad is no longer a city in the conventional sense. Streets are unrecognizable. Landmarks vanish. A factory wall still stands, but behind it there is nothing. Rubble piles create new elevations, new sightlines, new killing grounds. Smoke drifts low, clinging to the ruins, muffling sound and distorting distance. Fires burn unchecked, painting the night orange and black. German forward observers struggle to orient themselves. Maps are suddenly useless. A street marked on paper no longer exists. A square is now a crater. A 5-story building has become a mound of broken stone, perfect cover for a machine gun. And somewhere beneath the rubble, Soviet soldiers are still alive. They emerge at dusk, soot-covered, bleeding, deafened. Some are fresh replacements ferried across the Volga under shell fire only hours earlier. Others are factory workers, handed rifles, and told where to stand. Rank matters less here. Survival matters more. They don't retreat. They dig into basements, into sewer pipes, into the shattered bones of the city itself. The Luftwaffe returns the next day. And the next, entire districts are reduced to nothing. Yet every bomb that falls removes another open space the Wehrmacht depends on. Tanks cannot maneuver. Artillery cannot find clear lines. Infantry advances are swallowed by shadows and sudden fire. The Germans advance anyway. Grenadiers move cautiously through ruins that feel alive. A doorway explodes as a satchel charge detonates. A sniper fires from a place that shouldn't exist. A Soviet machine gun rattles from behind a collapsed wall, cuts down 3 men, then disappears. Orders are shouted, misunderstood, ignored. Platoons lose cohesion within minutes. This is not blitzkrieg. This is something else. Inside the city, the Soviet command adapts with ruthless speed. The order is simple, brutal, effective. Stay close to the enemy. Close enough that German artillery and air power become liabilities. Close enough that every fight is personal. Meters, not kilometers. Rooms, not fields. Factories that were bombed in the morning restart production by night. In the tractor factory, workers assemble T-34 tanks with shells still falling, then drive them straight off the line and into combat. Paint unfinished, crews barely trained. The tanks roll out through broken doors, engines roaring straight into the smoke. Across the Volga, Soviet barges push through fire and ice, bringing men and ammunition into a city already declared dead. Many don't make it. Some boats sink mid-crossing. Others unload under machine gun fire. The survivors run straight into the ruins without stopping. The city is being fed, slowly, painfully, relentlessly. Paulus reports progress. Buildings captured, streets cleared, flags raised. On paper, the advance continues. In reality, every gain costs more than the last. Every night, Soviet counterattacks reclaim what was taken by day. Casualty lists grow longer. Supply lines stretch thinner. And winter is still weeks away. The bombing was supposed to end the fight before it began. Instead, it erased the battlefield Germany understood and replaced it with one that consumes time, men, and certainty itself. In Berlin, they still expect collapse. In Stalingrad, the city is already teaching a different lesson. September 1942. Stalingrad Central Districts. Morning arrives without light. Smoke hangs so thick over the ruins that dawn is felt rather than seen. The air smells of burned oil, brick dust, and something sweeter, rotting food mixed with death. German infantry move at a crawl now, rifles raised, fingers numb on triggers. Every step is deliberate. Every shadow is watched. This city does not reveal itself all at once. It ambushes. A Feldwebel signals his squad forward through what used to be a residential block. The street is gone, replaced by a trench of debris waist-deep. They advance single file. Boots crunch softly on broken glass. Somewhere nearby, water drips steadily, like a clock counting down. Then the silence snaps. A burst of submachine gun fire erupts from a collapsed stairwell. 2 Germans fall instantly. One doesn't scream. The other does, and the sound echoes off the ruins in all directions, drawing fire like blood and water. Grenades are thrown blindly. The blast shakes loose more rubble, more dust. When the smoke clears, the stairwell is empty. The Soviets are gone. This is how Stalingrad fights now. Appear, strike, disappear. German commanders call it Rattenkrieg, Rat War, a battle without fronts, without rear areas, without safety. Soviet soldiers crawl through sewers, punch holes through interior walls, and wait motionless for hours until the enemy passes within arm's reach. Then they kill quickly and vanish again. The Wehrmacht was trained for maneuver, coordination, speed. Here, none of that matters. A factory hall becomes a fortress. A single room changes hands 5 times in one day. A staircase is defended like a bridgehead. Soldiers fight for piles of bricks because those bricks offer cover. A destroyed piano becomes a machine gun nest. A child's bedroom becomes a sniper's hide. At the center of it all stands a Volga. On its western bank, Soviet forces cling to strips of land sometimes no wider than a football field. On the eastern bank, artillery lines up wheel to wheel, firing continuously into the city. Shells scream overhead day and night, turning rubble into dust and dust into fog. The river itself becomes a killing zone, crossed only under darkness, under fire, under orders that allow no hesitation. Every night, reinforcements cross. Every night, many do not return. General Vasily Chukov, commanding the 62nd Army inside the city, makes his headquarters in a shallow bunker barely meters from German lines. He refuses to retreat east of the Volga. His orders are blunt. Hold at all costs. No step back. Not because victory is guaranteed, but because retreat would mean annihilation. So they hold. Soviet soldiers memorize every crater, every shattered wall. They learn the sounds of German weapons, the rhythm of their patrols. They set traps with wires and grenades, place snipers in pairs, one to shoot, one to watch. The legendary marksman Vasily Zaitsev stalks the ruins, turning German officers into priority targets. Each kill is not just tactical, it is psychological. German losses mount. Paulus's reports grow more cautious. Progress is measured in meters. Divisions are rotated in and out of the line, but there is no real rest. Even rear areas are shelled. Even command posts are not safe. The 6th Army bleeds steadily. Death by 1,000 engagements that never make headlines. Supplies lag. Ammunition consumption is far higher than planned. Replacement troops arrive exhausted from long marches, only to be thrown directly into close combat. Tanks bogged down among rubble, exposed to anti-tank rifles and hidden guns firing from point-blank range. Flamethrowers clear basements until the operators are picked off by snipers. The ruins favor the defender, and the defender knows it. Factories become symbols. The Red October, the Barricadi, the Tractor Factory, names that appear again and again in situation reports. They are bombed, stormed, partially taken, lost, retaken. Fighting moves vertically now. Basements, ground floors, upper stories, rooftops. Control is never complete. The enemy is always below you, or above you. One German officer writes in his diary, Stalingrad is no longer a city. It is a graveyard. Yet still, Berlin insists on victory. Hitler orders Paulus to take the city completely. Prestige matters now. The name itself, Stalingrad, has become symbolic. To abandon the fight would be unthinkable. Reinforcements are promised. The Luftwaffe claims it can keep the army supplied. Optimism, detached from reality, hardens into command doctrine. Inside the ruins, Soviet soldiers listen to German loudspeakers calling for surrender. They hear promises of food, of warmth, of survival. Some laugh. Others ignore it entirely. They know what surrender means here. Winter approaches. Temperatures drop at night. Frost coats twisted metal. Wounded men freeze where they fall. German uniforms, designed for mobility, offer little protection against what is coming. Soviet troops, hardened by climate and desperation, adapt faster. And beyond the city, far beyond the range of German binoculars, something else is moving. Fresh Soviet armies assemble in silence. Tank corps reposition. Artillery is stockpiled. Staff officers study maps not of ruins, but of open steppe, of flanks held by weaker Axis allies, of distances that can be crossed quickly, decisively. Stalingrad is consuming the Sixth Army's attention. That is exactly the point. Inside the city, the fight tightens further. German units are pulled deeper into the ruins, chasing a victory that feels always one block away. Each step forward narrows their margins. Each day spent here drains strength that cannot be replaced. The Germans believe they are close. The Soviets know they are ready. And when the next blow comes, it will not strike the city itself, but everything around it. November 1942. The steppe north and south of Stalingrad. Before dawn, the cold bites hard enough to draw blood. A pale fog clings to the open ground beyond the city, muffling sound and flattening distance. Soviet soldiers stand silently beside their weapons, breath fog in the air, fingers stiff in side gloves worn thin by months of fighting. Artillery crews check fuses one last time. Tank commanders climb into T, 34 turrets slick with frost. Engines idle low, coughing, then settle into a steady growl. This is not improvisation. This is design. For weeks, while the Sixth Army bled itself inside Stalingrad, the Red Army rebuilt its strength beyond German sight. Entire formations were shifted at night. Camouflage nets concealed gun lines stretching for kilometers. Ammunition was hauled forward in silence. Fuel was rationed, hoarded, saved for this moment. Operation Uranus. At 7:20, the silence ends. Thousands of Soviet guns fire at once. The shockwave rolls across the frozen steppe, like thunder trapped under the earth. Axis positions, held largely by Romanian Third and Fourth Armies, are ripped apart in minutes. Trenches collapse. Communications vanish. Officers scream orders that cannot be heard. Then the tanks come. T-34 surge forward to the smoke. Tracks biting into frozen soil. Turrets already firing. They do not slow. They do not pause to consolidate. They drive straight through the shattered defensive lines, crushing anti-tank guns before they can be swung into position. Overrunning infantry still stunned by the barrage. Romanian units fight where they can. Some hold their ground stubbornly. Most cannot. Their equipment is outdated. Their anti-tank weapons nearly useless against Soviet armor. Within hours, the flanks of the German Sixth Army, never meant to face a major armored assault, begin to collapse. Inside Stalingrad, Paulus hears the first reports late. Enemy breakthrough, heavy armor, loss of contact. At first, It sounds like exaggeration. Local setbacks, the kind that happen on every front. Paulus orders reserves to move, but there are no true reserves left. Almost everything capable of fighting is already committed inside the city. The Sixth Army has been drawn too far forward, too deeply engaged, too confident in the assumption that its flanks are secure. They are not. By the second day, Soviet pincers are racing westward, north and south of Stalingrad, moving with a speed the Germans did not expect and cannot match. Motorized infantry follow the tanks, mopping up resistance, seizing bridges, cutting roads. German columns retreat, only to find their escape routes already blocked. Maps become lies. Staff officers in Paulus's headquarters redraw lines again and again, each version worse than the last. Radio intercepts confer what the frontline reports suggest. Soviet forces are not aiming for the city. They are aiming beyond it. At Kalik, west of Stalingrad, the jaws close. On November 23rd, Soviet spearheads from north and south link up. The encirclement is complete. Inside the pocket, over 250,000 men, German Sixth Army, elements of 4th Panzer Army, units exhausted, under strength, scattered across ruins and steppe alike. They are surrounded. When the news reaches Berlin, disbelief comes first. Hitler refuses to accept withdrawal. He forbids breakout attempts. The Sixth Army, he insists, will be supplied by air. The Luftwaffe will fly in food, fuel, ammunition, everything required to hold until relief arrives. On paper, it sounds possible. In reality, it is fantasy. The Luftwaffe does not have the aircraft. It does not have the fuel. It does not control the skies. Soviet fighters inflict terror into transport planes as they struggle to land on makeshift airstrips under constant artillery fire. Weather worsens daily. Snowstorms ground flights. Engines fail in sub-zero temperatures. Crates are dropped miles off target, landing in Soviet-held territory or vanishing into steppe. What reaches the pocket is a fraction of what is needed. Inside the encirclement, reality settles in slowly and then all at once. Rations are cut, then cut again. Horses are slaughtered for meat. Fuel runs out, immobilizing vehicles that once symbolized German mobility. Wounded men pile up in cellars and bunkers with no medical supplies. No heat, no evacuation. Frostbite becomes as deadly as bullets. Paulus sends message after message requesting permission to break out. Each time, the answer is no. Hold. Stand fast. The Führer expects it. Soviet pressure increases steadily. Artillery tightens its ring. Attacks probe weak points. Every German attempt to reorganize is met with fire. The Red Army does not rush now. It squeezes. Patient. Relentless. Inside Stalingrad, the fighting changes tone. There is no longer talk of victory, only survival. German soldiers dig deeper into the ruins they once thought they controlled. They burn furniture for warmth. They share ammunition sparingly. They listen to Soviet loudspeakers offering surrender, this time with a different weight. Some units begin to disappear entirely, swallowed by combat or cold. Others fight on out of discipline, out of fear, out of habit. Officers struggle to maintain cohesion in a force that is no longer an army, but a collection of freezing, starving pockets. The Red Army watches and waits. Every day the encirclement holds is a victory. Every hour the Germans remain trapped is another step toward collapse. Winter does what bombs and bullets could not, stripping strength, eroding morale, killing quietly. Paulus still believes relief will come. Manstein's forces are assembling to the south. A breakout may yet be ordered. The idea persists like a mirage on the horizon. But time is no longer on the Sixth Army side. And as December deepens, the cold grows sharper, the ring grows tighter, and hope, once abundant, begins to freeze solid. December 1942. Inside the Stalingrad pocket, the temperature drops without ceremony. One night, it is manageable. The next, it is lethal. -20, -30. The cold seeps through greatcoats, through boots, through skin itself. Metal burns to the touch. Rifle bolts seize. Machine guns refuse to cycle unless kept wrapped against a man's chest. Frostbite claims fingers first, then toes, then entire limbs. Men wake to find their boots frozen solid to the ground. This is no longer a battle governed by maneuver or firepower. It is a battle ruled by endurance. Inside the encirclement, the German Sixth Army contracts inward, not by order but by necessity. Units abandon exposed positions to huddle in cellars, factories, bunkers carved into frozen earth. Streets once fought over block by block are simply left behind, surrendered to snow and Soviet artillery. The airlift falters further. Each day, the Sixth Army requires roughly 600 tons of supplies to survive. Each day, the Luftwaffe delivers a fraction of that, sometimes less than 100 tons. Some days, almost nothing. Transport aircraft crash on icy runways or are shot down on approach. Crews fly until exhaustion or death claims them. Still, it is not enough. Bread rations are reduced to crumbs. Horse meat becomes the primary protein. Men boil leather belts, scraps of frozen vegetables. Anything that might quiet the hunger for an hour. Dysentery spreads. Wounds fester. Morphine runs out. Paulus's headquarters grows quieter. Radio messages from frontline units become shorter, more desperate. Requests for ammunition. Requests for medical evacuation. Requests for permission to pull back a few hundred meters to more defensible ground. Denied. 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 In Berlin, Hitler insists the pocket must hold. He promotes Paulus to field marshal in January, an unspoken message wrapped in ceremony. No German field marshal has ever surrendered. The expectation is clear. Inside the ruins, the promotion changes nothing. Soviet pressure intensifies methodically. Artillery fires daily. Probing, adjusting, walking shells closer. Infantry attacks are deliberate now. Carefully planned, supported by tanks that appear suddenly through smoke and snow. The Red Army has learned this terrain. They move through it with confidence born of months of brutal experience. They no longer need to rush. German counterattacks, once sharp and effective, become rare and costly. Fuel shortages leave tanks immobile, turned into stationary pillboxes. Ammunition is rationed so tightly that some units are ordered to fire only at point-blank range. Others are told to hold fire entirely, to save bullets for a final stand that everyone knows is coming. Morale fractures unevenly. Some soldiers cling to discipline, to routine. They shave when they can. They clean weapons that may never fire again. Others withdraw into silence, eyes hollow, movement mechanical. Letters home are written and rewritten, then never sent. Many know they will not leave this place. The Soviet loudspeakers return. They broadcast in German now. Calm voices. Factual. They describe the encirclement, the hopelessness of relief, the certainty of death if the fighting continues. They promise food, warmth, medical care to those who surrender. At first, the messages are ignored. Then they're argued over. Then they're listened to in silence. Manstein's relief attempt, Operation Winter Storm, pushes north and south in mid-December. For a brief moment, hope flares. The sound of distant artillery is interpreted as salvation. Orders circulate for a possible breakout. But the breakout never comes. Manstein's forces are halted short of the pocket, beaten back by Soviet reserves thrown in with ruthless efficiency. The Red Army anticipated the relief effort. They prepared for it, and they crushed it. The truth settles heavily over the Sixth Army. No help is coming. January arrives like a verdict. The Soviets launch Operation Ring to destroy the pocket completely. Massive artillery concentrations hammer the shrinking German positions. Entire sectors collapse. Units are split apart, isolated, erased. Airfields fall one by one, ending any meaningful resupply. The pocket is cut in half, then cut again. Paulus relocates his headquarters repeatedly, retreating deeper into the ruins as Soviet troops close in. Each move is shorter than the last. Maps are almost pointless now. The front line is everywhere. Food is nearly gone. Ammunition nearly exhausted. Medical care non-existent. Thousands of wounded lie in freezing shelters, untreated, delirious. Typhus spreads. Men die in their sleep and are left where they fall because there is no strength left to bury them. On January 31st, 1943, Soviet troops reach Paulus's headquarters. The field marshal surrenders the southern pocket. 2 days later, The northern pocket collapses as well. The fighting ends not with a final charge, but with exhaustion. Over 90,000 German soldiers march into captivity, ghosts wrapped in rags, guarded by Red Army troops who can scarcely believe what they see. Of the more than 250,000 men encircled, the rest are dead. The city is silent at last. Stalingrad is no longer burning. It is frozen, shattered, unrecognizable. But it stands. And in that frozen ruin lies something far larger than a destroyed army. For the first time, an entire German field army has been annihilated, not delayed, not repelled, destroyed. The myth of invincibility is broken. The certainty that carried the Wehrmacht across Europe drains away into the snow. What began as an act of arrogance, bombing a city into dust to prove a point, has ended as a transformation of the war itself, and the world is about to feel the consequences. February 1943. The Volga flows indifferent beneath ice-laden barges. Stalingrad lies in skeletal ruin. Streets are buried under debris and snow. Factories are hollow shells. Rubble smothers every building, every street, every memory of what the city once was. Smoke drifts lazily from smoldering equipment, the odor of cordite, burned wood, and human suffering hanging thick in the freezing air. Silence is not peace. It is a residue of absolute violence. Soviet soldiers move carefully through the ruins. Faces grim, rifles ready, boots crunching over glass, brick, and frozen mud. They catalog destroyed tanks, artillery, and abandoned German equipment. Medics tend the wounded. Officers escort prisoners through streets still marked by death. Many prisoners collapse along the way. Some are barely able to walk. Survival itself has become arbitrary. Commanders like Georgy Zhukov and Alexander Vasilevsky survey the city from elevated positions. Binoculars trained on Stalingrad skeleton. Their expressions are unreadable, professional. Yet behind the discipline lies recognition. Stalingrad has rewritten the rules of modern warfare. A mechanized, industrialized, disciplined army has been encircled, starved, and destroyed. Every lesson has been purchased in blood. Every doctrine forged in fire and winter. The Wehrmacht is no longer the unstoppable force it seemed. Officers in the German High Command study casualty lists in disbelief. Entire regiments, veterans of campaigns in Poland, France, and the early Blitzkrieg, are gone. Maps are redrawn, not to plan offensives, but to prevent further collapse. Propaganda officers scramble for words. Temporary setback, they say. A heroic struggle. The word defeat is forbidden, but the reality is undeniable. Across the Eastern Front, the consequences ripple. In London, Winston Churchill pores over reports late into the night. Intelligence briefings in Washington are rewritten. Tokyo reassesses strategic assumptions. Axis planners realize the war is no longer predictable. Stalingrad is more than a city. It is a strategic pivot. It is a symbol that no army, no matter how disciplined or mechanized, is invulnerable. Meanwhile, inside Stalingrad, the Red Army consolidates. Survivors move silently among ruins, cataloging the dead and collecting weapons. Families, soldiers in training camps, and citizens across the Soviet Union hear the victory. Stalingrad becomes synonymous with endurance and resilience. It is the first point in the war where belief shifts, where the notion of German invincibility collapses. The Sixth Army's remnants, captured, starving, frostbitten, are marched east in columns. They are alive, but shadows of men they once were. Morale, pride, certainty, all are gone. Less than 6,000 will ever return home. Each step eastward is a lesson in humility. The Red Army has endured, adapted, and survived against the industrial might and arrogance of the Wehrmacht. But the lessons are not solely military. Urban warfare doctrine evolves instantly. Engineers refine building clearing techniques. Tank crews adapt anti-tank tactics. Infantry develops infiltration methods. Artillery coordination becomes precise, ruthless, and adaptive. Stalingrad's devastation becomes operational art, a template for future campaigns. The city itself bears the scars. Every street corner tells a story of resistance. Every collapsed building is a monument to German overreach. Smoke, ash, and the bitter cold record of history that no report could capture fully. Stalingrad is victory, yes, but only at an inconceivable human cost. Millions dead, cities destroyed, survivors scarred physically and psychologically. Beyond the battlefield, the psychological impact on the Axis is immense. Confidence in German invincibility fractures. Officers now fear encirclement more than frontal attacks. Allied planners take note. Resistance movements gain courage. The rhythm of the war changes forever. Stalingrad has become a lesson in endurance, adaptation, and the limits of military arrogance. And as Soviet soldiers stand among the ruins, rifles at the ready, the world begins to understand. The war has entered a new phase. January 1943, minus 30 degrees Celsius. The air bites like 1,000 needles against exposed skin. Inside the shrinking Sixth Army pocket, survival is now a numbers game measured in rations, ammunition, and frozen limbs. Every breath fogs instantly. Every movement costs energy the body cannot spare. Frostbite gnaws at toes, fingers, and ears. Men sleep sitting upright, afraid that lying down might mean never waking. Command posts are buried in ruined basements. Paulus moves cautiously, aware that every step outside is a gamble. Mortars whistle overhead. Artillery pounds at irregular intervals. Radios are frozen, messages lost or delayed. Orders from Berlin are precise but cruel. Hold at all costs. Obedience is doctrine, yet discipline frays under the pressure of starvation, cold, and relentless combat. Supply drops arrive sporadically, often incomplete, sometimes entirely missed. Ju-52 transport planes wobble through crosswinds, engines coughing in frozen clouds. Soldiers scramble over crates, fighting to salvage anything useful. Bread frozen solid, ammunition for rifles that may no longer fire, winter clothing for men who have lost their coats to frost. Fuel is scarce, and engines fail in the relentless cold. The Luftwaffe cannot deliver what is needed. Relief is distant, stalled, or blocked entirely by Soviet advances. Inside Stalingrad, time itself seems distorted. Each day stretches endlessly, measuring the shuffling steps of weakened soldiers, the distant rumble of artillery, and the occasional scream piercing the gray silence. Urban combat continues relentlessly. Soviet infantry and armor push block by block, basement by basement, using techniques honed over months of slaughter. German positions are encircled, isolated, and exhausted. The city has become a weapon. Rubble that once blocked streets now channels attacks. Collapsed stairwells become machine gun nests. Factory floors turn into fortresses produce tea. 34 tanks under fire, engines barely broken in, guns ready before crews have ever fired. German soldiers stare in disbelief. They were told the city was destroyed. Yet here is resistance, organized, lethal, and adaptive. Officers issue orders, but the troops executing them are mere shadows of their former units. Companies merge, platoons vanish, squads dissolve into scattered survivors. Starvation dictates decisions that bullets never could. Soldiers boil leather belts of soup. Bread is rationed to the point of absurdity, sometimes cut with bayonets to extend supplies. Dysentery spreads unchecked, adding another layer of suffering. The Sixth Army is alive, but only in fragments. Outside the pocket, Soviet forces tighten the trap. Katyusha rocket barges scream across the steppe. T-34s grind forward through snow and debris, sloped armor shrugging off outdated anti-tank fire. Infantry follow methodically, exploiting gaps in frozen, exhausted German lines. The encirclement is complete. Any hope of breakout is a fleeting, desperate thought. Manstein's relief force is delayed, stalled under constant counterattacks, unable to punch through a combination of weather, terrain, and well-coordinated Soviet positions. For the German soldiers inside, time has become the enemy. The longer they hold, the more the city and the winter consume them. Commanders calculate fuel, food, and ammunition with precision, only to watch those calculations collapse under the weight of reality. Obedience meets futility. Discipline meets attrition. Survival becomes the only measurable goal. Every movement is careful. Every order weighed against the cold, exhaustion, and ever-present death. And in the gray dawn over Stalingrad, as the snow swirls over frozen ruins, the true scope of the trap is clear. The Sixth Army is not merely besieged. It is being consumed. By the city, by winter, by relentless, patient enemies who understand that time itself is a weapon. Late January 1943. The sun barely rises over the Volga, filtering weakly through clouds of smoke, ash, and frozen dust. The Sixth Army has been reduced to skeletal formations. Once proud regiments, hardened by France, Poland, and the Blitzkrieg in 1941, now exist only as scattered remnants. Officers who commanded battalions just weeks ago shuffle through snow-clogged streets, guiding men who barely respond to orders. Their faces are hollow, eyes sunken, hands blackened by frostbite, weapons clutched like lifelines rather than tools of war. Supply lines have collapsed entirely. The Luftwaffe airlift is failing under relentless Soviet fire and impossible weather. Ju-52 transports, fragile against wind and ice, drop a fraction of the rations required. Food runs out. Ammunition runs out. Fuel runs out. Morale, already frayed, teeters on the edge of breaking. Even the most disciplined soldiers begin to question, how long can we survive? Field hospitals are overflowing or frozen shut. Surgeons operate without anesthetic, with dull instruments in unheated basements. Wounded men lie stacked in corridors, their groans mingling with a whisper of snow drifting through shattered windows. Frostbite claims new victims daily, often silently, often unnoticed until hands, feet, or faces blacken beyond repair. Dysentery spreads through the encirclement, unchecked, as water sources freeze or vanish beneath the snow. Death is routine. Survival is a decision made moment by moment. Paulus moves among his staff in reinforced basements, poring over reports that are fragmentary at best. Berlin's orders are unyielding. Hold at all costs. He writes appeals for withdrawal, consolidation, or breakout. Each is denied. Hitler's obsession with symbolism, his promotion of Paulus to field marshal, ignores the grim arithmetic of starvation, exhaustion, and winter. Obedience is now a form of torture. Every order executed costs more lives than bullets ever could. Outside, the Soviets encircle the city with meticulous precision. Infantry advance behind creeping barges. Armor cuts through frozen terrain with relentless efficiency. Every German strongpoint is tested, exploited, or bypassed. The Sixth Army, once a feared mechanized force, now exists as isolated pockets, fragments of its former self. Communication between units is sporadic. Radios freeze. Runners vanish in snow and shellfire. The city's ruins, meant to be leveled, have become obstacles and weapons, a maze that crushes cohesion and amplifies vulnerability. By January 31st, columns of prisoners begin to move. German soldiers, gaunt, frostbitten, hollow-eyed, wrap themselves in tattered blankets. Some collapse mid-step. Officers march beside them, powerless to alter fate. Entire units have ceased to exist. The Sixth Army has surrendered in fragments, their famed discipline shattered not by bullet alone, but by starvation, cold, and the unrelenting siege of time itself. The surrender is not a moment of victory for Soviets. It is a quiet, measured confirmation of a truth long in motion. The rules the Wehrmacht depended on have been erased by fire, rubble, and winter. Stalingrad is no longer a city. It is a crucible, a weapon, and a grave. The Red Army stands not just victorious, but transformed, disciplined, relentless, adaptive. Every officer, soldier, and survivor carries a lesson. The myth of invincibility has been shattered. Confidence in German dominance evaporates with every frozen step, every empty ration, every rifle that fails to fire. Stalingrad is proof that no army, no matter how mechanized, cannot ignore the human and environmental variables that dictate survival. And beyond the ruins, the war itself pivots. The Eastern Front will never be the same. Strategies, doctrines, and calculations shift. Stalingrad has rewritten the rules. Yet within the city, silence falls first, not complete, but heavy, saturated with absence. Streets are littered with rubble, frozen corpses, and the remnants of machines once feared. Victory is measured in endurance, but at a cost unimaginable. February 2nd, 1943. The northern pocket finally succumbs. Silence stretches over Stalingrad like a shroud. Buildings stand hollowed. Streets are buried under snow, dust, and frozen debris, and the Volga flows indifferent beneath ice-laden barges. The remnants of the Sixth Army, fewer than 100,000 men, are now prisoners, hollow-eyed, frostbitten, broken not only in body but in spirit. Fewer than 6,000 will ever return home. Every regiment, every battalion, every once proud company has been erased, absorbed into the winter, the ruins, the relentless memory of resistance. The Red Army moves through the city methodically, cataloging survivors, capturing weapons, and marking positions. Medics tend the weak. Engineers record destroyed tanks, artillery, and vehicles. Commanders like Georgy Zhukov and Alexander Vasilevsky observe from the outskirts, binoculars raised, their faces unreadable yet calculating. The battle is over, but Stalingrad's lessons echo across the front. Urban warfare doctrine evolves here, in blood and ruin, teaching the Red Army the art of attrition, combined arms coordination, and the devastating efficiency of encirclement. Beyond the city, the world reacts. In Berlin, disbelief festers beneath rigid discipline. Maps are redrawn, casualty reports revised, propaganda officers scramble for euphemisms. Temporary setback. They call it a heroic struggle. The word defeat is forbidden, yet undeniable. In London and Washington, the news sends shockwaves through military planners. In Tokyo, Axis strategists reassess their assumptions. Stalingrad is more than battlefield. It is a strategic pivot, a symbol, a moment when the balance of the Eastern Front irrevocably shifts. Stalingrad's skeletal streets, frozen corpses, and shattered factories become a living archive. Survivors catalog every detail, every failure, every instance of improvisation and endurance. 34 tanks, still bearing the marks of factory paint and fresh serial numbers, are studied for lessons learned under fire. Soviet infantry who once crossed rivers under bombardment emerged disciplined, adaptive, and unbroken. The city has forged them, hardened them, and taught them the brutal arithmetic of war. For the Germans, the aftermath is equally transformative. The myth of invincibility, carefully cultivated through blitzkrieg and mechanized dominance, is irrevocably broken. Across the Eastern Front, Wehrmacht units recalibrate. Officers rethink strategy, and morale collapses quietly under the weight of a lesson delivered in fire, ice, and blood. Paulus's promotion to field marshal, meant as a symbol of honor, becomes a cruel footnote, an emblem of obedience over survival. And yet, even amid victory, the human cost is staggering. Entire communities lie in ash. Families are decimated. Survivors scar beyond comprehension. The Volga carries their memories silently downstream, indifferent to human suffering. The city is no longer alive in conventional sense. It exists as a testament to endurance, sacrifice, and the transformative brutality of modern warfare. Stalingrad has rewritten the rules of conflict. It has demonstrated that industrial power, aerial supremacy, and mechanized forces are insufficient against a determined, adaptive opponent exploiting terrain, time, and willpower. Every maneuver, every calculation, every plan must now consider the lessons of frozen streets, collapsed factories, and civilians turned defenders. The Eastern Front enters a new phase. The Red Army, tempered by Stalingrad, evolves into a force smarter, faster, and more relentless. The Wehrmacht, humiliated, weakened, and encircled, retreats into defensive recalculation. Across Europe, Stalingrad becomes legend, warning, and doctrine all at once. It is a crucible, a pivot, a turning point whose reverberations will echo for the remainder of the war. Stalingrad is over. The Sixth Army is gone. The city lies in ruins beyond comprehension. The war has entered a new chapter, written in endurance, suffering, and unrelenting strategy. Silence falls first, but it is not peace. It is a pause, a moment for the world to absorb the scale of what has transpired.